You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster, Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the FLOWMASTer SCHWARTZ from CBOE. The Option Block is brought to you by CBOE. CBOE's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cbo.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back. It is Thursday. It is noon Central. It is 1 p.m. Eastern. Do you know what's going on in these crazy, crazy markets we're all living through together? Well, let's find out, shall we? It's time for the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the THE, OptionsInsider.com, as well as from the network upon which so many of you folks are binging these days. Just a reminder that if you like what you hear, this show, anything else out there on the network, throw a like, a star, a comment, all that stuff in aggregate, no matter what platform you're getting it on, no matter what they let you do, all of that in aggregate. It does help us really keep drawing new people. Man, there's new people. Look at just what happened in the last 24 hours. People are frantically typing options and volatility and all sorts of things, and probably a little NVDA into their search bars on their platform of choice. And luckily, we're there for them. So keep that trend going. Like, a star, a comment does help that go a long way. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you want to join us, let's say, for Options Oddities tomorrow after Vol Views, you wanted to join us yesterday. Maybe you want to go check out the 300 plus awesome pro Q&As and oddities that are already waiting for you there, as well as that awesome panel I did with the FLOWMASTer and everything else, all these cool goodies and nuggets that only make their way to the pro. The optionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. As we go around the horn, see who's joining us today. I am actually happy that we are able to put a show together today. There was a big internet outage here in Chicago today. Looks like that might still be wreaking havoc with the uncle list of Mike. So we'll see if we can get him on a little bit later on in the show. But luckily, I'm able to hold down the fort, and I'm also joined all the way out there in the land of CBOE East. I did just see him right before the show, so I can confirm proof of life, even though he is busy getting his quotes of Solana. He is the FLOWMASTER himself, Mr. Henry Schwartz from the aforementioned CBOE East. Mr. FLOWMASTER, how go things in the land of the East, sir?
Everything is good in New York. Busy market days. I actually just put some slides together. I'm always putting slides together. So the deck I'm presenting tonight at a dinner was just a kind of a quick update, like kind of a state of the industry, but actually for people that are more focused on equity trading. And I just ran kind of what the volume's looking like year to date. And February, we're running about 49.2 million contracts a day. All-time records all over the place. Looks like today's going to be about 53, maybe even 54 million contracts. So things, and I think the healthiest part of that is we got growth in everything. Index, ETF, and single stock is back. Single stock ADV is around 26.1 million contracts this month daily. That's the same as 2021, which was meme-orama year.
Yes, a lot to unpack, and that tinny voice humming along can mean but one thing. We are joined, no internet outage down there in the southern volatility mecca known as Austin, where we are joined once again by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the show. To you as well, sir.
Yeah, good. I'm excited to be here. I just wish we had something to talk about.
Yeah, kind of a boring day. Maybe we should just call it now. Instead, I guess we'll keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let us commence operations on this mad day. But what's going on out there today? I don't know. It's kind of hard to find anything to talk about. Yeah, of course, dominating the headlines, dominating the market today. It's an NVIDIA world. We're all just living in it right now. And that is reflected in what we're seeing out there in the markets. I talked about this with a lot of people during our various shows throughout the week. I keep coming back to this point, and we actually put it out to you folks for a question of the week as well. But I'm hard-pressed to think. I've been doing this for a while now. I've been hard-pressed to think of another earnings where almost the entirety of the market, whether you traded or not, everyone was laser-focused on this one announcement. Maybe you could go back to the heyday of Apple a little over a decade ago when they were kind of ruling the roost. Maybe then, but even then, I don't think everyone was laser focused on NVIDIA the way they were last. Now you have Goldman coming out saying the most important company on the planet. We asked you guys last night. We were talking about this again during Options Bootcamp yesterday. So we put out a fun flash poll. Get to our actual poll, which is still ongoing a little bit later. But we put out a fun flash poll just during Options Bootcamp yesterday because Dan put it out. He thinks this is bigger than the Fed. So we said, do you agree? Do you think NVIDIA earnings are bigger than the next Fed announcement, at least in terms of their market impact? And 70% of you said yes. Only 30% saying no. So yeah, we're in rarefied air, listeners, when the earnings from one single company just kind of eclipsing everything else out there. And of course, everyone said they can't possibly make it. And looks like they did, and the rest of the market is just celebrating, which is funny because so much of the market has nothing to do with AI. What does Levi's care about AI or, Portillo's? You buying more burgers because of AI? But nonetheless, the market on the rampage today, S&P up 1.8%, 90 handles. We swung pretty much 100 handles off this news, listeners. We were selling off earlier this week just on the concern about NVIDIA. Now apparently all is right with the world. NVIDIA has righted the ship. NASDAQ, my goodness, up 2 2/3%. Dow up about 0.85%. And let us not forget our friends, the small caps, up about 1/3%. Still back below the 2,000 level after just, of course, they might be breaking through it at any moment. Did they break through it earlier today? Oh, they bounced right off of it. But the sell-off earlier this week kind of caught up small caps. They're trying to recover now. We'll see how much they can recover. But a lot of madness popping off. Of course, NVIDIA, kind of like the market's earnings announcement. So once that happened, Vol, of course, coming back in from the lofty, a little bit right around 16 handle we were hanging out at going into the announcement, at about a 14.20 when we kicked off the show, now down about 0.2 of a point. Again, we were off on Monday, so we're going all the way back to the last Thursday show. So you might say net, not a lot has happened on the vol front, but hey, we did a lot of living in between and got a lot lower, got much higher, and now we're hanging out almost unched, which is kind of funny. VVIX giving up the ghost, 78, down 6 points from where it was last Thursday. VXX 1410 down about half a point. UVXY 710 also down half a point. SVIX, you know it's ticking up, 3960 up 1.1 points. And our old friend UVIX 1080 when we kicked off the show, down nearly a full point. I threw some little crappy vestigial UVIX puts in my back pocket going into NVIDIA, and those are looking juicy right now. We'll get into all that fun on Options Oddities tomorrow, what I end up doing with all that fun. But a lot to unpack. Let's go around the horn the way we started. Let's go out to CBOE East. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, I'm not sure if you're aware of this company, NVDA, I think it's called, something like that, but it seems to be taking up all the oxygen in the room, sir. Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it, and sadly, I'm not involved. But but we were looking at obviously this has been a hot name, and we were doing some analytics on implied earnings gap last night using some of the CBOE data, and we were pricing in, I think, about a 60 handle move, so it's up about 100 points. So it's a heck of a move. One thing I did actually just notice, the biggest open interest change following yesterday's flow, because yesterday's volume actually was a little light heading into earnings, considering what the average daily volume on this thing is, which is somewhat insane. I think pushing around 1.42 million contracts is average. Yesterday was a little light, but the biggest open interest change was 36,000 of the Feb 23rd 1,300 calls. So those expire tomorrow. 1,300 line, which I am assuming is a risk control trade. I'm assuming, but you never know.
You never get the tap on the shoulder from the risk manager, and he says, "How about those 1,300s?" You got to just look at him and be like, "Really? Can we go a little?" I know we talked about garbage calls before, but that's kind of stretching the definition of garbage calls, sir.
Yeah, and there's still no bid at a penny today, so I guess I don't know. I mean, if somebody needed to buy those, I assume it was a buyer, then it actually kind of shows you that somebody was short something else. So this might actually be burning more people than you would think. But it's an impressive move. That's for sure. There's a lot of action, but overall, I mean, like I said, 53 million contract day, awesome volume, and we're hitting on all cylinders.
I need to dig into some more of those 1,300. Yeah, you're right. That is the top open position in NVIDIA right now. 52,000 of these things expiring tomorrow, listeners, of the Feb 1,300. That might get one of my just winner chicken dinner of the year. 56,000 of them trading yesterday. Listen, my goodness. According to this, Mr. Flowmaster, they actually traded 25 cents. Holy crap.
Huh. Yeah, I see that.
501.
Yeah, they did. They
did for 25 cents.
Yep. It was
oh my goodness.
Cuckoo bananas. And I mean, I don't know who was jumping on board those, but sold to you.
Yeah, that's a buy right you could do all day and feel pretty good about it. You get up to 1,300. I think some people would let a little bit of stock go at 1,300. I'm just guessing. But my goodness. Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. It's NVIDIA's world. We're all just living in it now. It's just kind of crazy town. But we're there. We might as well embrace the crazy. What was catching your eye out there in NVIDIA last night? And of course, leading into that as well, it got overshadowed in all the madness, but we had a huge rally into the close yesterday. So I know like 50 handles in the S&P. So I know you're slinging some 0 day. So maybe after your comments, if you want to do a little 0 day minute there, have at it.
Yeah, that was pretty bananas. I kind of track market standard, intraday standard deviation. And over the course of an hour, we went from down 3 standard deviations to up 3 standard deviations away from volume weighted average price. One of the nuttier moves I've seen. Something had to have leaked. That's the only explanation for us to rally 40 handles in, out of kind of nowhere. So, somebody clicked on the buy button and it was off to the races. I think the rally itself today is interesting. You know, the Dow not really getting a big, huge boost. It's really all tech today. When I'm looking at it, equal weight, S&P is up about 85 basis points, while the market cap, the big S&P, is up 1.85, NASDAQ up almost 3%. I'm interested that the financials are blowing up. You know, we're talking about NVIDIA at all-time high. JP Morgan, it is at an all-time high as well today, Mark. So we've got the financials and we've got the tech names. Now, I actually wanted to pose a question to you guys. All right. This, you know, the old saying in commodity markets and in, you know, cash markets is the solution to high prices is high prices. 75% margins will not last. What I know AMD and Intel are trying to get into the GPU business. I believe Apple is as well. You know, when does that threat of competition come into play with a name like NVIDIA? Because right now it's just straight euphoria in this thing.
It is straight euphoria. I was listening to some analysis of that this morning, and they're saying this addressable market is so big that AMD could come into it and still not eat into NVIDIA's lunch, which sounds on the surface absurd, but just given how much how much demand there is for this stuff now.
And the other thing is that demand needs to actually become profitable. Otherwise, that demand becomes vapid very quickly.
Yeah, that's the other side of this that has yet to materialize. All the companies that are spending hard on this, like Alphabet and they need to see some returns sometime in the near future, right?
Right. So that's kind of the question is, you know, Intel came out yesterday, I believe, and said they're going to be they've already sold a bunch to Microsoft. AMD is 100% getting into it. Qualcomm, I believe, is trying to play in the business. I know Apple is. So it's you know, when do you think this? I don't believe that the market is big enough that you bring in 4 or 5 competitors and margins don't fall. I just simply believe that is absurd.
The funny thing is, this is about the third boom and not yet bust, but boom to bust cycle we've seen in NVIDIA just in the last, I would say, within the last half a decade or so.
They had the Bitcoin mining.
They had Bitcoin even before that. And NVIDIA, I remember, had a big run coming out of CES years ago when they said, hey, we've made this cool new mobile chip, and now mobile is going to be the big area. And they had a huge run off that. That fell apart. Then, of course, right after that, on the heels of that came the crypto boom, and you couldn't get your hands on any of their cards. Remember, the miners were just bidding them out of any reach of anyone else. So that huge boom came. Then, of course, crypto winter came. The bust came. Obviously, we have yet to see the bust cycle on this. At some point, you're right. These margins have to thin up. But yeah, this so far has outlived, I think, both of those other cycles, and certainly from a value generation perspective, has dwarfed them. So. Funny how this is now the third tilt at the windmill for this exact same stock. And yet now it's suddenly working with NVIDIA, which again is fascinating. I do kind of wonder if we're hitting that point, that tipping point. My dad's arguing to me about how great NVIDIA is. It's the best thing on the planet. He doesn't watch graphics card makers. So is that the tipping point? I don't know. Maybe we're reaching that level with this saturation of NVIDIA is so big. But then we said that yesterday, maybe going into the announcement, and it got there. All right, speaking of getting there, I do think he has finally overcome the internet issues that have been plaguing a lot of the Chicagoland area today. I do believe we are joined finally, better late than never, by the uncleist of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, can you hear me? Are you there, sir?
I am here.
All right.
Can you hear me?
He lives. You sound pretty good, actually.
Well, that's good. Yeah, it's funny. So I've had good internet all day. I mean, I heard about what happened in the Chicago area, but I've been fine all day. I've been trading. Nothing happened. But then I click on the Skype button, and granted, I would have been a little late anyway, but the Skype issues made me a lot late. But nonetheless, here I am. In terms of what's happening today, NVIDIA is the big story, of course. Everybody knows that. Up over 14% on the day today. The thing that is kind of odd to me is that Apple is only up $1.50 on the day. Apple, it's like, if I'm not going to be the leader of this, then I'm not going to be a part of it. And Apple's just like, it's not my day to day, so I'm not doing it. So that's what I think seems kind of interesting. Based on everything that's going on in the tech world. Same with Google. Google's only up 0.8% on the day, but Amazon is up over 3% on the day. So Netflix is up over 2% on the day. So we are getting some movers in the tech world, of course, especially the fact that XLK is up over 3% on the day. But Apple and Google are not the big leaders of the day. And that's something that's kind of interesting to me today as we are looking through this. That's pretty much it in terms of what's happening today. It is NVIDIA. I don't think there's anything else that matters right now besides NVIDIA. That's clearly what's driving up the S&P so much. We're up almost 100 points on the day in the SPX. So it's going to be interesting to see if other stocks get in line and want to follow NVIDIA on the way up, or this is the time to sell some covered calls or whatever the case may be. But that's pretty much it, besides one thing, and that is, never before in the history of the entire stock market has there ever been a better chance to sell or a better time to sell than today. We have all-time highs, folks. Doesn't mean it is a good time to sell, but I'm just saying there's never been a better time to sell.
You missed it earlier on the show, Mr. Uncle Mike, but I was talking about some fun polls we have. We have a fun one going right now for the question of the week, but we also did a flash poll that arose out of our conversation on Options Bootcamp yesterday, where we were debating. My co-host there was suggested that NVIDIA right now, their earnings bigger than the next Fed announcement in terms of market impact. Where do you fall on that, Mr. Uncle Mike? You down with that, or you perhaps disagree?
Based on today, yes. It's not often. I don't think the next Fed announcement is going to give us 93 points of S&P movement.
Yeah. We were all saying, when can we get this post-Fed market? Who knew it was an NVIDIA market we were all waiting for instead? I mean, obviously, we've been talking about AI for a while, and NVIDIA is that trend, but still, just fascinating stuff across the board. Let's see if things are fascinating throughout the world of options, shall we, listeners? And the answer is kinda. Depends really where you're looking right now. Let's start in the land of VIX. And if you're expecting a crazy banger VIX day out there, listeners, then you might be, a little bit disappointed, because VIX is putting up some numbers, and certainly compared to its ADV, it's looking decent. The ADV is 738. So that ADV has actually come in a little bit over the past week since we chatted last on this program. I got a feeling that might change after these next couple of sessions, but we'll see. Right now, looking decent, but nothing crazy. 454,000 contracts on the tape right now. SPY, though, taking the bit in its teeth, as you would expect. SPY, 6.12 million contracts. That is fully almost 2 million contracts more than we would expect. Usually we expect SPY between 4.1 and about 4.3 this time of day. Maybe a busy day, 4.5. So 6.12 million contracts. That is nothing to sneeze at out there in SPY land. The ADV also looking robust at about 8.5 million out there. The S also saying, hey, don't forget about me. The S, 2.25 million contracts. That's about 500,000 more than we would expect this time of day as well. The ADV, 3.17 million out there. So they are not playing out there in S land. Small caps, we were just talking about them. Trying to make up some of the ground that they gave up earlier this week. Looking decent today, but not quite crazy robust. Not even to halfway of their ADV. 667 right now. Their ADV is about 1.43 million. So they got a little ways to go just to get to halfway to their ADV. And then, you know what? Just blowing the doors off out there today. They got the Qs already at almost 3 million, 2.94 million contracts. Usually expect to see right about 2.2 this time of day. So about 750,000 more contracts than we expect to see. The ADV 3.65. Going to hit that today, obviously on the back of all this NVIDIA madness. Let's get out to single names and see if they are following suit. And the answer is yes. Listen, we're seeing some impressive levels in terms of what it takes to break into the top 10 again these days. This earnings cycle really setting a new bar for that. Today, not quite there, but still very impressive. 370,000 contracts on the tape. That gets you to NVIDIA. No, I'm just joking. That's much higher up on our list. Spoiler alert. Number 10 does get you to Silicon Land, though. That's Intel, our old friends Intel. 42.97, giving up $0.50 out there today, or about 1.1%. So, Yeah, not the boom day for Intel that perhaps you might have thought, given just the fact that it's just optimism for all things hardware, all things silicon, all things chip, all things AI. Intel not getting the job done there. Still good enough for 370,000 contracts. Now, if you want a name that is getting the job done, holy crap, Super Micro Computer Inc., aka SMCI. This one, I do believe, making its first foray into our top 10 here on the show. Up 222 handles just ticked right now, or 30.25%, trading 956.20 right now. My goodness, I guess they like themselves a little bit of the NVIDIA earnings, huh? Holy crap. Let's just see year to date. It's up 30% today, so I got a feeling it's got a banger just year to date. And the answer is yes. It's up 236%. It came into the year $285, almost $1,000 right now. Up 674 handles on the year. My goodness. So yeah, if you think NVIDIA is insane, and it clearly is, but if you think that's insane, allow me to present to you SMCI for your trading pleasure. Number 8, again, maybe kind of reflective of this new volume regime we're hanging out in. And again, Uncle Mike was talking about this earlier. Apple not really in the vanguard of the AI, so maybe that is starting to be reflected. Maybe we're in a new regime. I'll have to put this to the FLOWMASTER, see what he thinks. But, we have talked before, Apple coming in at number 10 recently. Never seen that before. Now, Apple coming in at number 8, 477,000 contracts. Apple up $1.75 or about 1%, trading 184, pretty much even right now, but not enough to really move the needle out there from an options perspective. So yeah, maybe we are in this new paradigm where Apple is no longer the king of the roost or even number 2, but now hanging out somewhere in the bottom half, if not at the absolute bottom of the top 10. Number 7, it's Meta. 487, almost 488, up about 20 handles, about 4.25%. Good for 478,000 contracts. And the number 7 spot, number 6, it's our old friend Palantir. They were hurting earlier this week. They had given up about $2.50, maybe $3 on all this kind of weakness heading into NVIDIA, all this concern, all this fear. People were thinking maybe we're getting a little bit ahead of our skis in the AI space. Palantir was feeling that. Now they're feeling some burst of speed out there, courtesy of NVIDIA. Palantir up about nearly $1, 93 cents, trading about 23.70 or so right now. So a nice little day for them. And 480,000 contracts. And the number 6 spot. Number 5, soon to be the newest addition to the Dow. This is the Amazonians. So trying this continued effort to make the Dow sexy. Dare I say it, relevant to all of you out there. The Amazonians, 174.15, up about $5.50. Or about 3.3%. So they're feeling the euphoria out there today as well. 537,000 contracts for them. And the number 5 spot. Number 4, all this NVIDIA talk kind of overshadowed everything else, including the fact that Rivian getting taken to the woodshed. Rivian not having a banger evening at all. If you were hoping maybe this was the moment where the worm was going to turn out there in EV land, not last night, listeners. Rivian off $4 or about almost 26%, trading about $11.40 right now. Good for 650,000 contracts. Weren't we just talking about, was it back in August? We were talking about, was it the Rivian August 25s people were loading up on? Man, how the mighty have fallen. Yeah, the 52-week high is 28.06. I do believe that was around that time frame. We had that poll we did because we had so much crazy paper going up. Rivians, there was one other name, and then was the Keurig Dr. Pepper puts that ended up being the winner. Just crazy how Rivian has fallen out of bed. And good for 650,000 contracts. Number 3, we were just talking about this name. Can they catch up to NVIDIA? Can they at least eat into some of that market share? It's AMD, 181.90, up about $17.50 or 10, almost 11% today. And again, they've kind of been accelerating of late. They had that big Me Too press conference not too long ago saying, hey, don't forget about us. We do AI chips too. And ever since then, they've had quite the tear on their stock. Interestingly enough, given the news out of Rivian, what's going on with our number 2 name? Yes, I said number 2, it's Tesla, 1.43 million. By the way, AMD, 1.14 million for number 3 listeners. Tesla, number 2, 1.43 million, up 260 today. So managing to buck the trend. They were coming for it earlier. They sold it off to about 191 and a third. It has rallied exactly 6 handles from there. So Tesla shaking off this Rivian news and managing to just, I guess, participate in the general market euphoria that is We just have to call it NVIDIA Day from now. It's just a market holiday, NVIDIA Day. And then, do you need me to tell you what number one is, listeners? You might be surprised. Maybe it's not as much paper as you think. It is NVIDIA, 1.96 million. You might be forgiven for expecting 2.25, 2.5, maybe even threatening 3 million contracts at this point. You know, the 1300s going up 56,000 times. There's no rhyme or reason to any of this anymore. 774.75 is where it's hanging out right now. Up exactly 100 handles. My goodness. Those 700s, I believe, going into the announcement yesterday were trading for around $21.50 with 2 days to go. So those ended up being, a nice 50 handle winner. Again, complete gambling, complete riverboat gambling, but that's what you're into. That one ended up working out. So yeah, NVIDIA, no surprise, taking the top spot out here. We have other earnings highlights from this week, but does it even matter? It's all NVIDIA all the time. I mean, what else? I mean, we got Moderna after the bell today, Intuit and Live Nation. Is that going to change anything? Friday, Warner Brothers Discovery. There's been some fun paper going up in there. Check out Options Oddities if you want to see what we were talking about there. But yeah, all eyes, all dollars apparently are on NVIDIA right now as we keep rolling right on into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
Everybody, welcome to the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we get weird, we get wild. On Thursdays, we see what the FLOWMASTER has up his sleeve. Before we get there, really quickly, Mr. FLOWMASTER, I want to put this question to you because it's something I've been mulling over for a while. You know, we've been doing the show for a while. We've been crunching the top 10 for quite some time. And for pretty much as long as we've been doing this show, Apple for a long time was the king. It has fallen to number 2 in the last few years behind Tesla, but a solid number 2. Most days, it's pretty easily there. Sometimes it gets kicked to 3 or 4, maybe 5 if it's a crazy day. Never before have we seen it at number 10. Yes, we did see it there. I believe it was last week. Now coming in at number 8. We're seeing all these outsized parabolic moves in these AI and chip-related names that seem, at least for the time being, to be leaving Apple a little bit in the dust. So I'm curious for you as someone who spends all day knee-deep in the flow. Do you think this is a bit of a paradigm shift? Are we going to start seeing Apple kicked down to the bottom half of the top 10, or dare I say it, out of the top 10 altogether, sir? Have you noticed this trend as well?
Well, yeah, it's been a couple years since Apple really led. And I do think, it was such a behemoth, on a consistent basis. And things really do seem to have quieted down, in terms of the news cycle and the frenzy of activity. Their virtual headset was at $5,000, kind of sounded like a little bit of a flop. And it's, right now it is really all about, AI. And obviously, that's what we're seeing out there. I think SMCI, that's a crazy meme name we've seen. I believe the backstory is NVIDIA actually owns a little piece of it. Not at all that would make any sense in terms of pricing justification. But just the fact that NVIDIA does have an investment in it, I think, is kind of why it gets somewhat crazy. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not an Apple owner. I have friends who are, lifelong loyal investors and customers, and I just kind of feel like, there's nothing super duper exciting, right? They come out with their $1,000 phones every year, and people buy them, but just not, the excitement is concentrated in the AI world, and it's probably going to stay that way for a while.
Does seem like the options volume is backing that up. Let's see what options volume is catching the eye of the FLOWMASTER today. First, let's go out to the land of DraftKings. We were just talking about this on the show. Might have been on Oddities even last week. This one hasn't been on our radar in a while now. All of a sudden, back with a vengeance. DraftKings, you know it. Maybe you love it. Ticker symbol, easy for me to say. Ticker symbol, DKNG. Trading 40.75. Kind of unched today, so not experiencing the NVIDIA euphoria. So I guess maybe the AI boom does have its limits. Not carrying over to DraftKings. On the year, though, you know what this beast has been up to. This one is pretty impressive. It was $19.50 a year ago. 40 3/4 today. So that's up 108, almost 109%, about 21 1/4 handles on the year, listeners. So this thing has been pretty much straight up for the entirety of the last year. It topped out, looks like recently, at about 45 2/3. So it has sold off a little bit over the last couple of weeks. But outside of that, you can't argue with this stock if you've been a holder. Mr. FLOWMASTER, sir, what caught your eye out there in DraftKings options today?
So yeah, I'm not really a big sports fan, but I opened up a DraftKings account once it became legal in New York because I'm really interested in how they, kind of gamify and obviously the gambling industry is all about stimulation and innovative ways to use data. And so I've played around just because it blows my mind sometimes the ability to bet intra-game and do all sorts of kind of wild things, and then how they're able to manage how the system's able to manage the odds continuously is very, very similar to a market maker. I mean, it's kind of the same business, right? So with this trade, actually, at first, it looked like a call buyer. It looked like one of these, kind of the classic for us, right? We look for a unusually large, aggressive opening call buyer, and we say, ooh, that's bullish. And in this case, what the trade was 5,800 of the April 44 calls traded when the stock was at 40.53 this morning. They traded at $1.51 on a quote that was 136 at 151. Looks like a buyer. Compared to the CBOE value, which we put on trades in Trade Alert and Live Vol, the Theo was $1.46. So it looks like it was, one of these simple call buyers that's a nickel over theoretical value, but actually it wasn't, because when you dig into this, we talk about this open close data set that we have. A bunch of exchanges have it. We all call it the same thing, and it breaks out the activity by customers buying to open and buying to close, and selling to open and selling to close, and it's in 10-minute intervals. It's not trade by trade, but when you see a big trade, you can basically kind of back into the dynamics of it, especially if it's in something that's a little bit blocky like this. So when I actually dug into the details on these April 44 calls, they traded on CBOE, so it means we have the data set that shows if that was customer buying or selling, and it actually was a customer selling 5,900 total, and the firm bought 5,822. So, and this is an opening trade. There wasn't enough open interest for it not to be. Open interest was only 400 contracts or less. So, I looked at stock price. They did have earnings last week, and the stock was almost flat on earnings. And this actually looks to me like stock has doubled in a year, so it has been a great run. But it almost looks to me like somebody's like, okay, I'm an owner, but I don't really feel like it's going to get much beyond here. And they just wanted to, take some of that premium, even though it's a lot lower post earnings. And so it's actually kind of a call seller, if they have the stock, is still bullish because it means they're not looking for the stock to crater. But kind of a moderately bullish one. But I just like it because it's an example of one that you really have to look underneath into the data to make sure you get it right. In this case, it's a call seller in DraftKings.
I like that. Yeah, you're right, because sometimes you got to dig through the weeds. Always nice and handy to have a firm willing to step up and pay the offer for you. That's a nice thing. That shows you're a good customer. Mm-hmm. A customer in good stand. I don't think you and I could get that, Phil, Mr. FLOWMASTER, but someone was able to sell a $1.51 kind. Mr. Meatball, sir, you think you could sell $1.51 DraftKings April 44s, or should we look elsewhere?
I saw those, and I thought they were kind of interesting. That was not me selling them. But I did see those. And, DraftKings, a little bit of post-Super Bowl, a little post-earnings malaise. It's been as high as almost $46 recently. So, an interesting play, trying to, betting that it'll pop back over the 21-day moving average. But, yeah, no, I'm not selling those.
And Mr. FLOWMASTER, I'm with you. I like playing around with DraftKings during mid-game just to see how their systems update, because you're right, it is very much like an order book they have out there. They have to maintain the odds and move them with every play and every down.
Mark, they literally have market makers. Yes. That's what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's electronic market making. It just is in gambling markets. It's what the casinos do.
It's pretty fascinating to watch that,
So, yeah, they basically run a gambling business or a market making business.
Almost the entirety of all my sports wagering that I do is usually intra-game just because of that. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff. We'll have to have a whole new show on the network. And they have some cool products, and they have things that approximate the products we know and love. So they have some quote unquote futures and a few other things there. So the industry is starting to grow up. I would love to have, options on these games and everything else. We're not quite there yet, listeners, but maybe someday we shall see. As we keep on rolling into another name, I was just talking about them at the top of the show, and not in a good way. This is AT&T. Big outage out here in Chicagoland area today. Maybe other areas too. I don't know. I just know the local area here. 1660 or so, up about 30 odd cents, or I should say off about 30 odd cents on the day, about 2.25%. Looks like probably a lot of this driven by the news out there today. On the year, we talked about AT&T a little bit in the past year. Not exactly the sexiest of names. That's reflected in the stock. It was $19.38 a year ago, so they're off about $2.75 on the year. They peaked, looks like around April of last year, at almost exactly $20, $19.99. They couldn't quite break the 20 threshold. Then they gave up the ghost all the way down in July. They got down to $13.43. Then they spent the rest of the year fighting this way back up. February 1st hit $18.04. Then I think this past news, not exactly welcome, driving them back down to $16.62, where we're hanging out right now. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, what caught your eye out there in the land of AT&T, or as the old timers on SIBO used to say, telephone?
Telephone. That was one of the places I spent some time on the floor when I was brand new, and I learned some interesting things about how markets really work, especially back in the olden days. Before I get into it, I want to say one thing. That I was talking to a broker at Citibank one time. This is years ago, and we were talking about a trade, and he actually pointed out that they intentionally sometimes would put a customer who's a buyer up on the bid. Because and this guy actually used to work at a market maker shop. So I'm like, well, how could you possibly do that? That's like selling below value. That's against everything we learn. And he said, listen, it makes the customer very, very happy. And he said, if we put it up on the offer and then there's a whole bunch of kind of pile-on buyers of this contract, or if it's calls, people might run into the stock. He's like, it's going to run away from us. He said, so in a way, it was kind of done intentionally to cloud the data. Which I was kind of like, nuts. That screws up my whole approach. But it is one of the reasons that, there's a little game theory at work here, right? You have to think about like, if everybody sees a whole bunch of calls on the offer, they're going to go buy those calls. Some people will. Maybe they'll even run the stock up. And when you're a bank putting that trade up and maybe positioning it, he said, listen, theoretical value doesn't matter if stock's going to move on you. And on top of that, he's like, we just want to be, we want the customer to be happy, and we're perfectly happy to be clean on the trade, meaning, they basically buy it from all the people that are piling on, selling additional. So that was interesting. Telephone. So this is actually not really anything in terms of specific trades, but it's an overall, condition. And since we were talking about it, there were some headlines this morning about widespread outages, not just in AT&T. Some of the other cell providers had issues. But so the put call in there is, we got over 100,000 puts have traded today versus 70,000 calls. That put volume is 6 times normal for telephone. The call volume is only 27% above normal. It's pretty spread out. It's a lot of it is contracts that expire tomorrow. So the 16.5 puts that expire tomorrow, 25,000 those have traded, and the 16 puts as well, about 16,000 those. It looks like it's all buyers. Volatility. There's some longer dated stuff. Some March 1st and some March 8th are also in the most actives. The volatility is higher across the board in there, like up about 2 points in the near couple of expirations. And I actually think this might be an opportunity to kind of people reacting to kind of a one-off is usually a bad trade for those people. They see a headline and then they go, "Oh, I'm going to go buy some puts because I heard AT&T services are having problems." This stock it pays a pretty solid dividend. I think with the stock here, which is $16.60, it pays about almost a 6.7% div yield. I don't think there's any kind of current risk to that. And, so if put buyers are out there, I actually am looking at possibly selling something, or maybe even doing kind of a wheel strategy, selling some puts, and if the stock pops, or rebounds a little bit, I'll be happy. And if it goes down a little lower, I'll take the stock and hope that there's no issue with the dividend yield continuing.
Interesting stuff. Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. What do you think about these perhaps incident-driven AT&T puts?
Yeah, I mean, AT&T is not having a great day today, are they? It is not looking great for them. I saw Verizon trolling them on Twitter, which was pretty funny. I'm actually, frankly, surprised it's only down 2%. It was down a little bit more, but it is very hard to get people to switch cell phone companies. But something like this can do it. It might be worth the. I rather than buying AT&T puts, I might take a hard look at some Verizon calls because it's actually down 1.6% today. Or you could look at maybe they're more of a T-Mobile person. So you could look at T-Mobile that is down a little bit too. So there's maybe a trade in there.
Speaking of trades that are in there, Mr. Fleet Meatball, anything catching your eye today you want to talk about here on the Odd Block?
You mentioned Palantir. There's just a massive amount of volume there. I was actually kind of struck how much volume was in Palantir and the ratio going up. Calls are outpacing puts over 4-1 today, which is pretty bananas. And then I saw this ALIT trade. That I was actually going to ask Henry, was this the ALIT, the 20,000 ALIT, 9 calls and 9 puts for May? Was that it? I wasn't sure if it was a conversion or if it was a straddle, because they both went up on the bid, and 20,000 of those went up. And I wanted to ask the FLOWMASTER if, because I didn't see any stock, and but I want to know if that was a conversion or if that was a straddle sell.
I'm going to find out for you. I see it. I don't
May
see
24.
either. It does look like it looks like a straddle sale. I have a friend on the ARCA floor who I will check in with.
There you go.
That one, May. How about Mark? Take a look at the chart of ALIT. Do you want to sell the 9 straddle at $1.20 all the way out to May? So you got 3 months to collect $1.20 on ALIT. You a seller of that?
That doesn't seem that sexy when they were trading $6.50 just a couple of months ago. Trading about $9 right now. They're giving up about.
It was like 12 2 days ago, right?
Let's see. Let's go back on the. Oh yeah, you're right. It was about. Looks like about $9.50. Just last week. Yeah. So. Yeah. I don't think I'm loving that either way. You're right. You know me. I don't like going out that far with my premium sales anyway. Let alone for just $1. This one, but Alight Inc. listeners, this is not a name we have talked about here before. They're out of Illinois, whatever they are alighting on. We'll have to dig in. They have an activist hedge fund going on against them as well, so maybe they have some of this activist investing. We'll have to dig into this one a little bit, listeners, as we keep on rolling and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, listeners, you like that straddle? If it is a straddle, you like that, listeners out there in the light, hit us up, let us know as we keep on rolling. Speaking of letting us know, you folks had no shortage of opportunities to do just that. Last week, we asked you, hey, Tesla and Apple both trading around 188. I wonder how that trade is working out right now. Spoiler alert, Tesla winning that one. But they're both trading 188, so we thought, gun to your head, which one would you rather buy? To make it fun, we also added a couple extra. We said, I'll stick with crypto or I'll stick with VIX. And at the end of the day, 38.5% of you went the Apple route. After 1 week, that's not a winner, but of course, this is not a 1 week. We didn't give you a time frame on this, so imply a little bit longer duration than 1 week, but still near dated, not looking so great. Tesla right behind it, number 2, 29.5%. They had a nice little pop, almost up to 200, so looking a little bit better there. I'll stick with Vol, so a lot of you out there just slinging the contango trade. A little bit rough of late, but maybe getting back on the horse out there today, or maybe just going short, or maybe you're going long VIX, in which case, hopefully you hit some bids this morning. 20.5% for you folks. And then 11.5% bringing up the rear with crypto, even though that's been a pretty good trade out there of late as well. Even the FLOWMASTER. Before show, he's out there checking Solana quotes. So everybody's caught up in all the madness out there. We also asked you, at the start of the show, 70% of you saying NVIDIA earnings bigger than a Fed announcement. But our actual question of the week right now is along these lines. I think we kind of know the answer to this, but we asked you quite simply, everyone is laser focused on NVIDIA earnings this week, but how important is this announcement really to the market and to your portfolio. Very NVIDIA leads the market, or about as much as other earnings, or not much, it's overhyped. And you folks were down with this one from the beginning. You were all over NVIDIA. And again, it's hard to argue that you were not correct. Right now, 62.7% of you saying, yes, it's very important. NVIDIA leads the market. And it was that way heading into the announcement as well. So it's not like this is all recency biased. 20.3% saying not much, it's overhyped. Kind of hard to make that argument in light of everything we're seeing out there right now. And 16.9% saying about as much as other earnings. Mr. Uncle Mike, we'll start with you, sir. Are you surprised that our audience pretty much agreeing with what you said at the start of the show, that it's all about NVIDIA right now, saying NVIDIA leads the market? And now that NVIDIA is in the rearview mirror, at least for now, sir, what else are you keeping an eye on until the Monday show?
Well, I mean, it's kind of tough seeing as 99% of all my client holdings were in NVIDIA today. I mean, that's just kind of how I roll.
I knew it. Ha! Finally, the real Uncle Mike shows his colors.
Nah, I'm just kidding. It was all in NVIDIA out of the money calls going into today. So, we were only able to quadruple our money today. So it's kind of a slow day for the typical St. Charles Wealth Man. No, just kidding.
That's you buying the 1300s expiring tomorrow. That was you.
No comment. No, I am very minimal. I'm not much of a. We have some NVIDIA, but not a ton of it. But anyway, yeah, going into the weekend with NVIDIA in the rearview mirror, I think we need to see how the market reacts to this. I think tomorrow is going to be a key day in that, yes, today we have an S&P up nearly 100 points. But is this something with which we can sustain? Are we going to have a pullback tomorrow? We have the S&P moving upward 2 points, 2%. You need to just kind of prepare for a little bit of a pullback. And if you're wrong and the market continues to go up, it's not exactly a bad thing because you're still making money, but it might not be a bad idea to take a couple deltas off the table right now.
And Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until the Monday episode?
Well, I want to see what the NVIDIA fall through looks like. SMCI looks like it's in the middle of another squeeze. I want to see how that plays out. And again, JP Morgan all-time high. I'm watching these financials. But so those are and I want to see if Rivian is the next Pontiac. It's down $4 today, 26%. I'm interested in how this EV deal plays out.
I wonder how all those AUG 25 buyers are faring now if they've turned to the dark side. They kept buying all this time. And last but not least, Mr. FLOWMASTER, sir, what are you keeping an eye on till your next appearance next Thursday, sir?
When we're getting out of earnings season, which is nice. I agree that it's I think everybody should take a breath and try to figure out if we're getting a little too frothy here. I actually put a post on LinkedIn yesterday counting up the number of inverted skew single stock conditions going back to 2019. And, inverted skew is where the calls are bid more than the puts, so it really implies an expectation of higher upside probability. It's pretty speculative. And during the height of meme stock 2021, for a while we had like hundreds, actually 700 stocks, or almost 18% of the single stock world was positively skewed for a while. And currently we have about 200. Actually, after today, it might be a little bit higher. But that's about 4.5% of the single stock names have this positive upside skew. Now, when you get days like today where things really do move up, that actually makes a lot of sense. But in general, it starts to make me nervous when we really just see a lot of basically pricing of option skew that is kind of showing that that people are actually putting money out there, it's really only going to work out if things continue higher. And that, to me, I kind of want to be the side of that. I mean, actually, if you're still bullish, it makes call spreads nice and cheap, right? Because you're selling an upside call for some pretty juicy vol. I agree with Mike. Maybe time to take a breather. Consider overriding some of the stocks if you've been long and you've made some money. And just kind of trim your deltas a little.
Yeah, it's something we were talking about just yesterday on boot camp going into the big announcement. We were talking about that exact topic and about some of Mandy's research on the on the single name SKUs and just how juicy things are looking. And maybe that is, perhaps you're right, maybe that is the canary in the coal mine, that we are getting a little bit frothy, a little bit effervescent to the upside. So yes, maybe a good time to keep some of your powder dry for the next big move out there, listeners. That music means we are coming to the end of this big move, which is all things NVIDIA. But don't worry, if you want a little bit more of our content, and you also maybe want a little bit more of Uncle Mike, you didn't get enough of him today on this show because, of course, he was fashionably late. You say, man, I could use a whole episode with just Uncle Mike. Well, guess what? He's coming up with me in a little bit, about half an hour, if he can get all of his technology sorted out on a little bit of This Week in Futures Options. Before you go off to get your stuff fixed, Mr. Uncle Mike, where should folks go if they want to check out all of your Uncle Mike goodness in one place?
Follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, and then check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. Set up an appointment. I love talking to our listeners. It's always a joy. And stay tuned for This Week in Futures Options. How about that?
There we go. Uncle Mike, obviously very excited. I'm excited. Are you excited as well, Lil? I guess we'll find out in a little bit. And Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. Where should folks go if they want to dive deep into all of the pit goodness?
Yeah, head over to optionpit.com. We're excited to, we're putting out great content every day, talking trading. So come and check us out. optionpit.com.
.com, the place to go. Don't go to .net. Hucksters lurking over there. Only .com, the place to go. And last but certainly not least, from CBOE East, Mr. FLOWMASTER, sir, if you can tear yourself away from your Solana Quotron there, where should folks go if they want more CBOE goodness in their life?
CBOE.com/RMA, which stands for Risk and Market Analytics. And we will be happy to set you up with a trial, show you some of the magic, walk you through some of the shortcuts for odd blocks and all sorts of interesting things.
No, they can't have that shortcut. That's just for us. That is exclusive to us. You can have all the other goodies except for that one, listeners. We claim pride of place of that. CBOE.com/RMA, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. I will be chatting with your buddy, Miss Kathy Clay, coming up at the FIA Boca conference coming up now in a couple of weeks now. So FIA Boca moving up on us fast and furious. Got to head down to Florida for that. So stay tuned for that on the network and a whole bunch of fun. Stay tuned for Twifo in a little bit. And of course, coming up tomorrow, back again for a little bit of the old volatility views. Should be a fun time. Who's joining us in the hot seat? Got to tune in to find out. After that, exclusively for you pro folks, a little bit of the old options oddities. Will we have some fun trades to talk about? Yeah, I think we will. Then back again on Monday, another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by CBOE. When it comes to trading volatility, trust CBOE, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. CBOE's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.